Hey, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Welcome back to the Electric Vibe podcast. I'm Kurt Hoffman, your co-host, and to my left, this way, is my smooth-voiced brother from another mother, Mr.
J. David Silva, Kurt, and you know that I am the Electric Man.
Don't I Know It? So, hey, we're back on the air. It's been a little while. Lots of things going on in the background. Job promotions for yours truly, and all different kinds of sorts of things coming on. And of course, the holidays are upon us. Once we hit Halloween, and then we're eyeing next. Can you believe next week's going to be Thanksgiving?
Off to the races.
Off to the races. So we're this coming at us like a freight train. But Jay, there is a very watchful eye in your background behind you. Can you tell us who our special guest today is, please?
Yes, I can. And that watchful eye, Kurt, belongs to none other than keyboardist, songwriter, and producer Matt Dr. Fink. Known to millions as Dr. Fink from his performing days with Prince and the Revolution, Matt's had a distinguished career working with St. Paul and the Minneapolis All Stars, the Jets, Vanity Six, the Rembrandts, just a whole host of other great entertainers. Matt is a Grammy winner, an American Music Award winner, and a recipient of Gold and Platinum records. Matt has also released solo work, and he's had forays into production, video game soundtracks, and business ventures. And I know that you and I are both excited to welcome Matt Fink to the Electric Vibe.
We are. And I'm just going to add a few little things to that. So if anybody looks on our YouTube, it's not listening to this on any of the streaming formats that we're on. Um, Matt was a guest when it was just me solo as the Purple Kurt podcast. And this was about 2 years ago. In addition, today we've got another special guest, and that is going to be Howie Gordon. Howie Gordon just happens to work with my husband's his wife works with my husband basically at Moss Rehab. Howie is in a band called Package. They're a funk trio, and I believe it's packagemusic.net. But when Howie gets on here, he's going to be our other special guest today. He can clarify that for me. But Howie is a master keyboardist in this funk trio, and him and Dr. Fink hit it off right away. They both, speak that language of music, but more specifically with the keyboards and synths and stuff that Matt and him have played through the decades. So there's that language there. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but in the Philly metro area, not far from me in Harleysville, Pennsylvania, about 40 minutes from my house, there is a synth museum that he had referenced in this interview that we did with Dr. Fink called EMIAP, the Electronic Music and Educational Prevention Society, something along those lines. And they basically have a museum of synths who's who, like John Lord of Deep Purple set up his Hammond B3. They've got like Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer's entire huge Moog electric setup from his touring days. Jimmy Page guitar amps and stuff. I mean, I have not yet been to it. It was a private museum, but they're slowly transferring it and transforming it to becoming a public museum.
Wow. Okay.
And Howie teaches at Montgomery Community College in Pennsylvania here, and he's the professor of music. And he teaches classes, and one of his field trips was to this electronic museum. And one of these days, I've been threatening to go with one of his tour groups, with his kids, because I mean, you can actually play this stuff. They're allowing you to please touch. It's like a please touch museum with these amazing, I think like Christine McVie's got a piano in there. Yeah. Glenn Hughes from his Deep Purple days. There's a rig set up. I mean, it's just it's quite amazing. So. And I know Dr. Fink has not been in the Philly area for quite some time. And hold on a second. I've got a message from Mr. Gordon is on his way. So that means he's going to his classroom in his studio. So we're going to take a brief break before Howie gets on here.
Anytime.
Howie, welcome to the Electric Vibe podcast, the rebrand. Dude, first of all, that is a killer looking backdrop you got there. It's not a virtual backdrop. Can you tell us where you are, sir?
Um, I am in the land of fantasy and make believe.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's good to see you,
I
man.
mean,
Good to see you.
you too. I'm at work right now. I'm at the school. But so I work at Montgomery County Community College, and we have a pretty
Mhm.
awesome sound recording program here. And I figured this would be a nicer backdrop than my office.
Oh my God. Don't we all wish that that could be our office? I mean, I'm just saying, whether you're a musician or not, that just, I mean,
Oh, it's a fun room. I mean, we have a
can
whole
you, oh,
we have
so
a hold on. Let me
you
move
got
something
nice
out of the way.
mixing
Hold on a
desk
second.
there, nice monitors.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just moving something out of the way that's holding tape loops. But we also have yeah, we have tape machines over here, a Studer 24 track and a 2 track.
That very same Studer
And
24 track I saw at Paisley Park Studios, actually. So that's pretty cool that you got that there.
it's a nice one.
Ooh. What are the monitors, the speaker monitors that you got behind you?
So the main ones here, the three are they're the Genelec the ones, because that's what they call them, and then a pair of NS10s, and then we use Augsburgers in the back for when we want to like really annoy the people on the second floor. It's when you really realize, like, you know when we say soundproof, you
Adjacent.
know when you crank these things up, then you realize how soundproof your space is.
Oh, wow.
So there's
Wow.
actually, believe it or not, there's a chemistry lab above us that, oh,
That's okay.
things falling on my ears. Yeah, there's a chemistry lab above us. So that we don't rattle their test tubes, we don't fire these up during the day. We wait till nighttime.
Ooh, I'll have to come down there.
But yeah, it's awesome. And in fact, actually, the whole space here, you can see we're all set up for Atmos. In fact, this is our first Atmos room, and
Ooh.
we just built a second one in the summer. So
Ladies and
that's what we're
gentlemen,
doing.
Montgomery County's finest, right here. So that's killer. Howie, can you give us an update on what you're up to these days? The last time you were on, this was a different brand. And by the way, this is Jay Silva, J. David Silva, Howie Gordon, J. David
What's up?
Silva.
It's nice to meet you. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Oh,
This is
thanks
a
for having
different
me.
flavor, man. I'm glad you were able to make this. So literally, Jay, I mentioned to you that we've done this with Fink before, Howie and I, and Howie, you and him hit it off right away because you speak the language of not just music but of keyboards and synths. I mean, you guys had a verbal shorthand by the end of the whole thing, and
And as we discovered, the
oh
the
yeah,
the accents and dialects of our extended family seem to cover the same territory.
yes. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Oh my God! He said something. I don't even remember what it was, but he said something, and I said to him, I said, like, you just sounded like half my extended family, and it was like the Yiddish floodgates just opened up, and
Oh
he started
yeah,
going.
I know.
He's like, "Hey, Howie, we gonna go get some gigs?" It went to
Don't
pure
forget to drain the
ridiculousness.
coleslaw.
Yes, yes.
That
Is it
stuff. Oh,
lean?
I mean, the corned beef's
Is
got
the
to be
corned
lean. It
beef
better be.
lean?
Are we going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the deli, Howie? That's
right. He's
right.
like, we're gonna go gigging.
So when he actually comes on, I think you should be the first one, Howie, to like start things up. Oh,
Really?
Matthew, you mensch. How the hell are
Hey,
you? Shayla,
hey, you little schmeckle, you. Hey. No, I won't say that.
what the hell you been doing? Not only is he a great keyboardist, he's a great singer.
Oh, did you just come back from shul?
I did. Oh, it was such a
How
shanda.
how was how was Yom Kippur?
It was what it was. The rabbi,
You know,
he did the same lecture he does every year. Oi, I felt like I was
and
having the opposite of a mitzvah. I tell you,
I was just gonna say I'm such a bad Jew because I'm not even sure if that was the most recent holiday. I think it was.
Rosh Hashanah, I believe,
Well, then Yom
and then
Kippur
Yom
follows
Kippur.
that
Yeah,
by a
yeah. So
yeah,
Yom, it's a time of reflection and atonement.
whatever.
Howie,
Anyway,
this is God calling. Have you been a good schmendrick?
Never know what you're going to get on the electric vibe. We'll
You
cover
know,
oh,
Jay,
you got some toys.
I do.
Oh,
Oh,
amazing.
and guess what? Matt's entering the conversation. Shall we bring him in, gentlemen?
Let's please do that.
Certainly. Let's do it.
Here we are.
I don't know that was his last name. iPhone 2?
Matt's iPhone too. That's his middle name, I think.
Oh, I see.
Dr.
Matthew!
Fink, how are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. How about you guys?
You Superman shoes. Good to see you.
Well, thank you.
And
Matthew, you look like you just came from shul.
Well, actually, I just came from the grocery store.
That's the same
and
thing.
Same thing. And got myself a little simmus and some, gefilte fish. It's all good.
was the corned beef lean?
I like a little, sometimes the lean gets a little tough. I like a little bit of body to it. A little bit of marbling is always good.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
You like a little junk in the trunk on the corned beef is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. A little clogging, some clogging action taking place.
Does it come with Lipitor sprinkles? I just want to know. Inquiry minds want to know.
Only if the doctor says so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Matt, thanks so much for coming back. So, I feel like we picked up right where we left off, which was with laughter, because 2 years ago we were just barely getting out of the pandemic, and you weren't gigging as much and what have you, but you've been harder to get a hold of, which I'm happy to say that, because that means you've been more active here, there, and everywhere.
Not necessarily, no.
Really?
It doesn't mean, it just means you guys didn't have the right email or something. Or you
Damn
sent me
it.
an email. You have my email. You sent me the link. It was fine. Whatever that email was worked just fine.
Well, I sent you a reply all, because the first link I said, because I have an unlimited Zoom account, not that people really need to know this want to know this. I have an unlimited Zoom account, but it'll still time a video without people on it after 40 minutes, which was weird.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know it would do that. Well, anyway, I didn't confirm, but you sent the link, so I just knew if I hit that, we'd be fine.
Hey.
So I'm sorry. And then I noticed you tried to get a hold of me through my friend Eric at the River Rock Studios.
Oh, shit. Is that?
But that's okay. He's another email contact for business. I'm on there. I work at that studio from time to time. I'm one of their staff engineers at River Rock.
Yes, which we did cover the last time you were here. Yeah.
As well as this place I'm sitting in right now, which is my personal studio here. But I do, work with people from here as well.
And that's still known as the operating room, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And now my cat's trying to get up here. She wants to say hi. You want to meet Ellie the cat?
Absolutely.
Sure. I have two cats.
Come on, Ellie. Come on.
No studio is complete without a cat.
Yeah, you know how cats are. They'll kind of wander around your legs and go, okay, I'm going to come up, but I haven't decided yet. I'm coming soon. I'm looking. I see you. And I'm looking at you, but now I'm rubbing on your leg again. You know what I'm talking about? That's the routine, right?
I've got two of them. They're biological brothers.
Yeah, and they're like they try to figure out, well, I think I'm ready, and now I'm coming. There I am. And there she is. There is Ellie.
Oh, wow.
Wait a minute. Say hi to Ellie. Ellie, say hello to the podcast guys.
Oh, it's a Maine Coon.
Yeah, I was going to say Maine Coon. Beautiful.
Yes,
wow.
And Ellie, we call her our COVID cat here because we went and drove up to Brainerd, Minnesota. Have we heard of Brainerd before?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay, so that's up in like northern, not all the way to the north, but pretty far, 3/4 of the way up the state, in the middle. And there was a breeder up there that we found, and we've had two other Maine Coons. This is our third one, and we just love Maine Coons. I've also had a couple other breeds before we had the Maine Coons. My wife and I. She's had cats all her life before we even met, and I had a cat that when we met, I still had that kitty cat, but she was getting on in years. So this is Ellie. She is now 4.5. 4.5.
Wow.
What the heck?
Awesome.
It's crazy.
Fantastic.
Born in April of, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but born in April of 20, and she saved my ass through COVID. Really. She was like my COVID cat. She kept me company when I was alone at times. It was, it's hard here. Yeah. It's hard when you're alone. Except for my wife, of course. That's great.
Well, yeah,
she was
your
there
wife
too.
Your wife is lovely, but you were very candid the last time we were on before Jay and I joined forces. And Jay, this is Dr. Fink. Dr. Fink, this is Jay Silva.
Hi, Jay. Nice to meet you, Jay.
So you were very candid the first time I'd ever spoken to you in person about the COVID isolation and how it did a number on you. And of course, it did a number on all of us in various ways.
Sure.
And, really appreciate how candid and forthright you were about it because, you get to a certain age and station. It's like, you just, but you always struck me like a straight shooter, like, hey, this is how it is. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm getting through stuff,
Mhm.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
how are you with the jet lag? Did the jet lag wear off yet?
Just wearing off finally today, kind of. Because
And
it's such a quick trip to London. We left Tuesday afternoon, got in early London time the next morning, like 7:38. By the time we checked into the hotel, it was like 10, and then they didn't have our room ready because you can't check in. But they did. They rushed our room. We got in by noon, and then we took a nap, and then we met with a friend of ours who runs a publishing company there, and a sync licensing agent friend of mine who works with some of my songs
Yep.
to shop them for usage and things, movies and TV shows and things like that. So we were hanging out with him, and that was nice that evening. Yeah.
For the kids playing at home that may not know what sync licensing is, could you explain a little bit about that for us, please?
Yeah, the sync is short for synchronization rights. And what that means is a music business speak for licensing, paying a fee to use your song in a television show or a movie or video game, commercial. Those are the four big things right there. Sometimes, internet use as well for companies that want music when they're advertising on the web. So, the company that has been helping me lately, they're called Pop-Up Music, and they specialize in vintage music, meaning they represent a lot of stuff that was done ages ago.
Wow.
They have a ton of that in their catalog that they have access to or have deals with from artists and from all over the place. Anyway, long story short, I had a bunch of stuff that we did in the 80s, another partner of mine, songwriter friend.
Okay.
And that stuff was sitting around a bit, even though back in the day, A&M Records or A&M Publishing was interested in some of that material. They liked it a lot, but they wanted us to sign a publishing deal and then sit at home and write 50 songs a year together. And both of us were touring musicians at that time. I was with Prince, and he was with Laura Branigan and Jeff Lorber Fusion and Guitaro and people like that. Yeah. This is James Behringer, guitar player here in Minneapolis. So he and I were writing together at that time throughout the mid to late 80s, early 90s. So we had a bunch of that stuff sitting around still that didn't get placed with artists. So we gave it to Pop-Up Music, and they loved it because it was the vintage 80s thing they were looking for. And
that is fascinating. I literally, could geek out about that all day long. I took a cue from you because when you had mentioned sync licensing, I have a buddy of mine out in Maryland area, Adam Caruso, shout out to him. And he's a great musician, Towson University grad. And he had a song for me. He thought my voice might fit it because I sing in a hard rock vein,
Oh, okay.
I'm in the Zeppelin covers band, actually. So he sent me this song called Don't Tell Us It Can't Be Done. And it was this kind of generic, it could be used for an NFL sports talk show and that kind of thing, to give the vocals a little bit of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, that Ronnie James Dio grit, look out, that kind of shit. And, it was not my style that I necessarily sing in. I try to do more clean vocals, but when the sync licensing paycheck calls, hello.
Yeah, sure.
Free agent, hello. So, sure. but they didn't end up using it, but I still got paid for it.
Oh, so, that's good.
Yeah, hey, and that does, and better than anybody, that doesn't always happen.
No, that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
for that
So
to
okay.
occur.
Well, I'll listen. I took the money and ran. Okay, bills to pay, groceries or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
There's a guy I teach with here who would also completely fit right in on the whole Yiddish tip, but
Oh, sure.
he always says, how does a musician make a living? Any way you can.
Any way you can.
You got it.
That's the punchline, and it's not a
Yeah,
punchline. It's
No,
just
it's
what it
not.
is.
it's just what it is. Yeah, exactly. So I was fortunate to have. I think last time we spoke, I explained how I had a job with a tech company that got hurt by the COVID thing, and then
The
they had
tech.
to lay. No, that I'm just saying it was a tech company. It was doing
Okay.
software and things like that. But I did I talk about that last time?
Yeah, you did a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't have to. We don't have to rehash that then.
No, that's okay. I mean,
That's fine.
I think there are going to be a lot of people because this is a kind of a rebrand of sorts. If you want to sum
Okay.
it up a little bit, that'd be fine.
Well, I'm not really doing anything with them at the moment because of the COVID thing kind of disrupted it. But
Yeah.
lately, I've been working with another tech entrepreneur by the name of Sabe Anderson. I've been working on an album project for him, just adding keyboards to some of their songs. So you can look him up online and see what he's up to. He's got
Cool.
some AI things happening right
Okay.
now that is slated to go online soon and is going to be used for mental health,
Mm.
helping people with mental health and other artists, whether you're a musician or not, to help either get online and learn things or teach on their platform and also to market yourself. It's kind of like an AI assisted platform. And I'll have more details as things progress, but at that time I'll be,
Yeah.
once it's launching and I'm involved with it more, I will be, advertising and promoting it.
And please feel free to come back on or reach out. We'd love to have you back to talk about that because Matt, you are you've always been involved in cutting edge technology, since the early days of your career with Prince, and you're continuing that. But you're not only continuing it for yourself, you're helping others and the younger generations, trying to navigate this perilous journey.
The new frontier.
Yeah.
The new high tech frontier that's happening, that's unfolding here.
I mean,
Unfolding
songs are being generated by
a
AI, for God's sakes,
Yeah, I'm fully aware. I was on the road earlier this year and doing a show somewhere with some friends, and one of the gentlemen played me a song that he had created using AI. And he said, "This is what I told it to sound like." And then he explained which influences he put in there from which bands and stuff. And primarily one of them, the main one, was Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Okay.
And then he had a topic and he had some rough lyrics and he threw it in there and it spit out something that was surprisingly good. That's what scared me, because a year earlier I experimented with another platform like that and it sounded horrible. I mean, it was just really bad. So it's already learning. The machine learning is already expounding upon itself and learning. And then I said, "Then what are you going to do with this?" He goes, "Well, I'm actually going to build a song around it, but it's going to be humanly played once I mess with the arrangement and the lyrics and make it my own. But it's going to be my first AI assisted song." And I went, "That's just crazy. Are you going to put it out and then let the public know that it's AI assisted?" And he said, "I don't know yet."
And it's a wicked dividing line between some of the stuff, like a lot of people are rebelling against it, but if you are if we think about like when back in the day when Vision and Performer were like the sequencing software of choice, even back then there was stuff that you could get random MIDI stuff spit out. There were random. I mean, it's not AI, but there were random generating parts to stuff back then, and I know a lot of people were like back then saying, "Oh, well, you didn't write that." And
exactly.
It's tough to pick a side in the argument.
Who gets the publishing rights on that? Because it's artificially driven. How does that even work?
It's really, like I said, it's the new frontier of legal stuff that they haven't quite figured out. They let the genie out of the bottle, and they haven't figured out how to get him back in 100% so it's under control. So it's I just don't know yet what's going to happen. It's
What?
kind of, yeah.
Well, you. This is not your first barbecue or rodeo, Matt. What do
Yeah.
you foresee it? How do you foresee it transferring? I mean, I get chills thinking about it. Not good chills.
Yeah, because people, somebody's going to be cheating a lot with
Oh,
this
sure.
in a lot of ways, and whether they're a musician or not, and that's the other thing. And
What
then
was
and
it?
then what? Yeah, it's I just don't know. And how do you have to have some sort of digital stamp on it that tells you it was done with AI, and that way the consumer can know that, and then maybe the platform that created it has to take a licensing fee because it helped with it. That's the only thing I can possibly think of.
I
And
mean,
here we're kind of hitting into that licensing thing of the music somehow, so everybody gets their piece of the action.
right.
Yeah, it's really wild. It's the
I,
Wild West again, kids, and I don't know.
shh.
I mean, I should really bring this up with some music lawyers I know and just say, what are you guys thinking about this right now? Are we discussing this? Are you guys discussing it? Who's discussing this whole thing?
What nefarious characters, more importantly, are discussing it, and how are they going to? Is it going to be an Amazon-based kind of conglomerate kind of?
I I don't know. And then of course, back in the early twos when Napster disrupted everything,
Oh God.
we're now having this other disruption about to take place. And I just don't know yet how that's going to work. Now, for my experience though, the AI generated songs now that I'm hearing, they don't have the audio quality of a great studio yet. I'm assuming that's going to be surmounted though.
Oh sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
if it
yeah.
does that, then we're really in trouble. Because whenever I've heard these demos, they still don't sound like they're great mastered pieces. You can tell there's something up with them. It's not quite
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
I
they have
mean,
that uncanny valley quality to them where it's just like A for
it,
effort, but
it's got a little too it's too artifacty, as they say.
yeah,
There's just
Yeah.
stuff going on in it that's
yeah.
not clean enough to be a real thing.
So
So to be a final master. So that's the thing. But
yeah.
gosh, if it changes and it gets to a level of where you can't tell the
Yeah.
difference. And right now, as you all know, I as a keyboardist and as an engineer, I'm using a lot of digital plugins of synthesizers, emulations of old vintage
Yeah.
synthesizers.
Yeah.
And I've A-B'd the the software versions against the hardware versions, and it's very difficult to tell the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Especially in a
you know better
mix.
than anybody.
And especially in a mix.
Yeah. In fact, I
Especially
was going
be
to actually ask you that, like
yeah.
what's your workflow today? It's leading me to two different questions. One, because you're a product of the hardware,
Yeah.
and how much are you kind of going plug-in versus booting up the real units?
Well, to give you an idea of something I just did recently, and in fact I even have this song that I'm talking about in front of me at the moment, because we put real guitars, we replaced some sampled guitars with real guitars now on this song, and now it's ready. It was mixed, and then we just had to add this little one more guitar part of the real thing to replace the sampled one. And the engineer, who's a world class guy, not to toot my own horn, but guy in Nashville who's mixed for some of the greatest people
Mm.
and co-produced and engineered. He said, "Matt, I want you to do one in the box. This is the first song we've ever worked on together. There was a collaboration between me and three other people on this. A lyricist, the engineer wrote some of it and sang the demo. This gentleman I'm talking about, and then he had another songwriter in Nashville, young guy, sing it. So
Yeah.
anyway, long story short, I finished my mix, and he just said, I think you nailed it. And hey, did you do it all in the box? I said, yeah,
Yep.
I did it all in the box this time, completely. No outboard gear in the chain anywhere.
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So And I've done this before on other projects. I've been doing in the box mixes for a while. And I've also sent stuff out to people who use both. They have hybrid operations, and they sound fantastic too. I don't know. It's getting to that level where you can do it all in the box though, and people are impressed. Guys that are sitting in front of their old SSLs or their Neves and all their outboard gear that they use.
The consoles, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and all the old compressors and new compressors, all the hardware stuff. It's weird. So I'm using emulations of all that stuff now, like we can, especially in Universal, because I've got an Apollo 16 with all the Universal software at my fingertips, all the Waves software at my fingertips. You name it. I got a new plugin I got to tell you about that I really like, that my son Max, you know about my son Max, right?
Yes.
As an artist. Okay, so he just finished his EP and they're just in the middle of mixing it right now, and it's being mixed to Dolby Atmos as well.
Ooh.
But he turned me onto this plugin, which is like kind of like an analog saturation tube kind of thing. You guys have probably heard of it, but not everybody has. It's called Black Box.
Yes.
By Brainworks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys use that from time to time?
I know of it. I don't actually use it myself, but yes.
Okay. I've never used it. For the past 5 years, I've had a self-imposed moratorium on buying any more plugins unless
Sure. Well, my son insisted on this one because the reviews on it were such that he just said, everybody's using this, and they're all the guys that I know.
Right.
You got to get this. It's the latest thing. Okay, we'll put it on it. And sure enough, boy, oh boy, it just adds. Yeah.
What's so is it giving the warm sound of the analog synths, or what's it doing?
It's a mixture of what you get on your two bus when you put some sort of warmth, but what it does is it makes it sound like 2-inch tape to me a lot. Like where the depth and the width, the 3D nature of those mixes comes out better than in the old digital days. Like, Pro Tools stuff is very brittle and sounding, and not, you had to do things to make it, you have other plugins to make it wider and deeper. Yeah, so not only are you using that, you're kind of wider, deeper plugins, but you add this on top, and it does another thing. It opens it up even more, makes it more transparent. So that's what I like about this Black Box, but it also warms it a little more too. It takes the edge off of that digital thing. Harshness, and I'm going 24/48 all the time. In the old days, I'd go 24/96 a lot when I had my Pro Tools HD system when I first started using it in 2002. We went 24/96 or 88 all the time to get the most, biggest picture of the of the music as we could when we were tracking. But now I go to 24/48. I can't really hear the difference much between a 24/48
I was going to ask
and a 96.
Are you feeling like you're losing stuff, or are you feeling your computer is able to breathe a little bit?
No, these newer computers are so powerful that they sound much better than they used to too. So you're getting a better vibe. How often do you record at higher rates?
Me, only when someone really asks for it, and then I go, do you really need it?
Yes, because it eats up a lot of disk space. But regardless of that, though, I mean, people in Hollywood for TV shows and certain things, they want 24/96. So if you're working on stuff like that, they ask for it.
Yeah,
I get if you're doing orchestral stuff, but you know what I mean. Sure. It's just like if you're doing chunka guitar, it's like
that's true. You're right.
You really
yeah.
This is fascinating. I'm so glad I'm so glad, Matt, you're here to help those of us. I mean, I'm mainly a singer. I do play a little guitar. I can play keyboards and what have you. But you guys really know your craft and know all the technology iterations. So my question to you is, what DAW station are you working with now?
Well, I've always been a Pro Tools guy.
Pro Tools. You're still Pro Tools. Okay.
I at one point before Pro Tools in the mid to late 80s, I was a digital performer. Okay. And then I went Pro Tools started working heavily with Pro Tools in the late 90s. and then went HD in '02 when that first came out, like pretty not too long after it was released. And anyway, so that's what I use. And then I have Logic here too, which I'll work in a little bit. But my son, who's at home now, he was out in LA for 8.5 years. He's moved back to Minnesota for a while. He's using Logic here at the studio when he's working on projects.
We got to get the two of you together on a podcast sometime.
Yeah, you should. You need to interview him for sure.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to.
He's even more knowledgeable than me. So tell you what, when he gets ready to put his EP out, I will contact you guys, or just be on the look at it and contact me. Just stay in touch with me because I'll probably forget.
Oh no, that's fine. Is he still collaborating with Darko?
Yes, in fact, they just put out a single of a re-record of the song "Melt with You."
Oh,
from the '80s, and
modern English.
Modern English. I was going to say modern English track, and he sang it and co-produced it with Darko.
Oh, I love it.
Check it out. I think it's on YouTube under the Darko channel, or wherever. It's probably on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. Maximilian Darko. And just remember to replace the second letter of each name, the A, with an upside down. I'm sorry, it's a V, not an upside down A. It's a V, an actual V. Why do the kids spell everything with a V instead of an A? Can you tell me? So they go DVRKO for Darko, and he's not a terribly young guy. He's in his early 40s, but don't tell anybody. By the way, he's written some great songs for soundtrack work. Like, he had a lot of stuff in Shrek movies and stuff like that. Anyway, cool. Great songwriter, Darko. He has a real name, but I'm going to let him go with the stage name for now. And then Max Milli, which is MBXMILLI. So you got Darko and Max Milli, and the issue is they didn't know that they each were replacing the A with that V when they met each other. It was like kismet. It's like, hey, you spell your name with the V instead of the A. And he goes, yeah, I do too. Who else does that? I don't know.
Okay. So are they going to do an EDM version of Tradition?
I have no idea if they're going to do that.
They could do an all EDM version of Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh my God. They should. Actually, that would be pretty fun.
Like a Hamilton type thing.
Yeah.
So does that mean they're recording to Vanalog?
That's correct.
That's good. You know what? I just want to jump in for a minute because
sure, go ahead.
And Howie, I'm loving the dialogue between you two. And one of the things Kurt and I try to do is when we have guests on, we want to hear about your craft. Matt, obviously, your experience, Prince and Revolution, is legendary. It's well documented. But hearing you guys talk about how you record and how you go about your processes is, I think, for Kurt and I, really part of the reason why we do this.
Awesome.
But I wanted to ask, how has this advent of technology and the things that you do now either changed or helped shape how you craft and create music now versus how you were doing it decades ago?
Well, having the digital audio workstations, whether it's Pro Tools, Logic, or Ableton, there's several more I can't remember. FL Studio, there's a bunch of them out there that have come along that people like, and that has just made life exponentially easier for musicians to create music, and it just keeps getting better all the time, sound wise and ease of use, and the ability to have really millions, hundreds of thousands of sounds at your fingertips. So yeah, sometimes the creative possibilities are infinite with what you can do now. Yeah. And it's just, you just have to go online a lot and go on YouTube and learn how to use all the tech and the plugins, because there's so much available. You just got to do tutorials, especially, because otherwise you'll be lost in the dark.
Do you have
it is overwhelming. It is a tsunami of options.
It is. It's a tsunami.
And I think you have to be a little bit proactive in committing to a decision.
Right.
It's like dating now. It's like, well, swipe, what plugins?
No, I have go-to stuff like we all do, and it's like you just have to stick with what works and not
Yeah,
go
get
crazy.
overwhelmed.
So what were you going to say? What was the other gentleman
Sorry,
about
I
to
was going to chime in and say when I interviewed Martin Ware, producer and member of the group Heaven 17, he produced for
Oh,
Tina
sure.
Turner's Private Dancer album,
Oh,
Terence
sure.
Trent
Martin Ware.
D'Arby's debut,
Mm-hmm.
introducing the hardline. He talked about this very fact, and he's got a wonderful podcast. And you've interviewed with Martin. You were on
Yes.
Electronically Yours,
Yep.
if I recall.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
And he talked about how just there's too many bloody plugins, Kurt, and it just sometimes you just he teaches at a college, and he says he teaches these students and says, look, don't get overwhelmed and lost. I'm paraphrasing, lost in the sauce with all these millions of options that you have. Like you said, Howie, you commit, just use a few, and just sometimes when you restrict yourself, you can actually be more creative. You know, as the late great Quincy Jones called it, paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
You could sit there and fuck around with sounds all day long, or just okay. So let's see what I can do with this. Let's see what I can do with that, and limit yourself to a little bit.
What you know what I do?
Yeah.
I try to get something in my head in advance of what I'm hearing. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to go, okay, I'm looking for this sound or that thing. And then I go looking for it. And then once I find several options, I try to narrow it down. And once I do it, I'm done. I just don't go back. Oh, this sounds good now. Okay, I'm done. Don't keep looking. This is working.
You have to. You have
Yeah,
to
because
commit
you'll
to a
drive
decision.
yourself crazy. You have to
You
commit,
really do.
like you just said earlier. Exactly.
There's a former colleague. Actually, both Kurtz and my spouses are scientists, and they both work in an institute. And
Together.
someone who used to work there.
Mm-hmm.
This is brother's former roommate's cousin. Anyway, so someone used to work there. Her husband wrote a book probably 15 years ago. He was a college professor. He wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice. And it's all about how more options is actually leading us to be not only more depressed and more dissatisfied, but his prime example was like when you go buy jeans back in the day, it was like I need jeans
Levi's.
in my size,
Yeah.
and you're done. And now it's like there's 20 different styles, so you wind up not making a decision because you're just overwhelmed by all that. And I see that same exact thing happening here. You got 5 billion plugins, and just pick one and see what it does. Because if you don't, I'm sure you've seen that famous meme where it goes, the mix is almost finished, and it's a skeleton sitting at a console.
Yes.
Because if you don't, it's just you're never gonna actually achieve the goal of writing a song.
Okay,
sorry.
Go ahead. You go first, and then I'll go.
No, sorry. I was going to say, Michael Koppelman, and Jay and I have had him on before, but Michael off the air, we talked about how Prince only used 6 tracks, and he went back and looked at the master tapes. Only 6 tracks for the title song "Sign of the Times," and when it got to after you had left the fold, Matt, he was using, tons of, 48, 128 tracks or whatever. And it just, he felt like the same kind of thing was happening with Prince. Well, here's all these different hundreds of sounds and stuff like that. And it didn't necessarily make the songs better. It just made it more, I don't know. He said the wall of sound was cool and everything, but he preferred the starkness to earlier albums that you were involved in, like Dirty Mind. That there was a certain real, when sampling and hip hop came into the lexicon, that he's using all these hundreds of sounds and it's great and it's cool, but is it making the song better?
It depends
how
it's
a subjective
produced.
thing, I know.
But if you, it's subjective. But I noticed that as Prince got into that, like, oh, look at what I can do now, it did tend to get a little overproduced, probably.
Yeah.
In some ways, but yeah, so I don't know. It just depends on your taste and
sure
what you want to do. But I do, I like sparser production personally. For me, I like to, but sometimes I do get kind of full. It happens. Sometimes the song demands it to be really full of stuff and layered.
Sure.
So it just depends.
You know
Yeah.
what, Matt?
And I'm curious about. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no. Go ahead. You
Okay,
first.
I'm just curious, like, because we were talking about like how this has influenced your methodology in the studio. I'm curious also the flip side of that is like what has changed for you now when you go perform live? What is your rig streamlined or is it complicated? Are you doing
Yeah.
laptop or are you doing
Yeah.
no laptop?
Yes. My rig's very streamlined. I have one, uh, you know, workstation keyboard, which is the Korg Kronos is my go-to one. There've been newer iterations of that, but I still have that one, and I like it a lot. And then I just have a MIDI controller triggering plugins on the main stage for Logic for live, like a lot of people do now, because it's so much easier.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to rent a lot of backline that way, and you don't have to haul around a hardware synth either.
Right.
You just rent the Korg, and I bring a memory stick, plug it in, and put all my programs, and I'm done. And then I have my laptop with everything on there on main stage, and we just hook it up to a MIDI controller, which we either can rent or sometimes I'll bring my own and just put it in the luggage. 61 note controller.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Matt. What did you do when you did the Revolution during Celebration, when you played for the Revolution? Was that same kind of setup?
Exact setup I just described.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I was using Oberheim plugins.
Versus
all the
what
Oberheim
was
sounds.
okay for the Oberheim stuff. So when you compare what you were using for your setup to what Lisa was using, was she using more tactile, old school setup, or using a similar setup to yours?
She had a combination of both too. But she had like the new OB dash, or is it the OB X dash 8? Is that the new model that came out?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So a friend of mine had one of those, and he let us use it for her. She wanted a hardware Oberheim, and that was latest model. And then she had a controller under that, which was also using a main stage rig of some kind.
Okay.
Yeah, similar.
You know what, Matt?
And would you feel? Go ahead.
Sorry, Matt. Having said that, you've done thousands of gigs, live shows, right? And you're talking about your setup. Can you just tell us, after all these years, whether you're playing, say, with St. Paul and the Minneapolis Funk All Stars, what performing is still like for you to this day? I mean, is it still that rush for you?
It depends on the gig. Sometimes we get these events that are like corporate type events or special events like that, and sometimes the audience participates quite a bit, and other times they're less participatory, so to speak. So you're kind of up there. You're more of a background fixture for some of those gigs. And some people get into it, but then half of them are kind of like talking to their buddies and doing their thing and eating dinner or whatever. So, but those are fun to do. But then the actual more like festival type gigs are more fun, and playing in front of bigger crowds.
Sure.
Yeah. Always.
So, Matt, we've been coming up on a lot of anniversaries, and of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up that this has been the 40th anniversary starting the summer of Purple Rain, that juggernaut that you were involved in. And I never take for granted that you've allowed us to talk to you. And, I at the risk of sounding like a total fanboy, having the honor to talk to you is like talking to Buzz Aldrin or Neil Armstrong. It's like talking to an astronaut. You were part of something very special that not many people will ever get to experience in their lives. What does it mean all these decades later to have been part of that juggernaut?
Well, the word grateful is the biggest word, because
Sure.
you were always aspiring. I was aspiring to be working with somebody like Prince as early as junior high, when I was, had my first band together when we were just barely 13. I think we played our first gig. We were all about 12 and a half. We played some girl's private bat mitzvah, which I maybe told you guys last time. I don't know.
You did. Odella,
Yeah, so,
I think the band.
Yeah, Odella, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a bunch of kids on my street growing up. It's funny. Yeah, we all lived right next to each other practically. And then the bass player, we added a different bass player about a year later, and he lived about 6 blocks away. So anyway, so that band lasted from 7th grade all the way through our senior year, and we added another guitar player along the way. He was fantastic. Young, came from a musical family. His parents were Las Vegas musicians.
Oh,
So
wow.
he started early. So when he was 15, when we met him, we were all 14 at the time. He was a year ahead of us. This guy could shred like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he was like as good as he could play Jimmy Page style of playing.
Oh,
Eric
cool.
Clapton licks at the age of 15.
Wow.
So we said, "Will you be in our band, please?" And he's, so he did that, and he stayed with us all the way through our senior year. But he lived in another town just next to ours. We were in a suburb of Minneapolis, and he was actually in the city proper. And so that was that guy. And then from there, I was in 2 more cover bands, and then Prince. But where were we at? What was the question?
No, that's great. You said it right at the beginning of the question after I finished it, and that was, what does it mean all these decades later? And you said gratitude.
Grateful, lucky and grateful to have met Prince and had the opportunity, and really knowing people too around here in Minneapolis that had an in to Prince, which was Bobby Z.
Yeah.
And, so that just happens like that, and very grateful to him as well for introducing me to Prince.
I can certainly echo what Kurt was saying because, I got into Prince back in the early 80s, and watching that juggernaut, the Revolution was an entity sometime itself. I remember seeing the Purple Rain show tour in March of 1985. And from where my seats were, I could see you all come walking out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, the crowd who were, in that area just erupted. So it almost took on a life of itself. Yes, Prince was Prince, but the Revolution still is the Revolution. So that's my fanboy moment.
Well, we were like, you could say we were like the E Street Band, and
absolutely,
we're like that kind of thing. It's like so and so and the blah blah blahs, we were the side guys with Prince that were fortunate to be with him and get some, work done with him and be in on some of the creative juices of it all during that era. So it was an amazing time to be part of that. Yeah. It's kind of, you have to pinch yourself while you're doing it,
Every night that you had to play those keyboard bits that he recorded at half speed on When Doves Cry, I still marvel that you pulled it off.
I don't know how he did it either, because when you go back and listen to the live version, we were playing it even faster. Prince had the tempos going faster for live. So when that solo comes in on the Syracuse, New York live video of that show, I hadn't heard that in quite a while when it came out again, and I just went, how did I do that? It must have been like on some sort of adrenaline high or something.
That's what I was going to say, adrenaline.
It was like playing the Flight of the Bumblebee or something.
Right.
Well, in adrenaline, I'm sure drove the tempo even faster than he was wanting to play it. I mean, you guys were...
Well, no, actually the drum machine was set for that song.
Sure, okay.
And so that one, Prince would say to Bobby, I wanted it 100 and blah, 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 instead of that, tonight or all the time. We're going to do it because it made the show flow faster. And really, most of the tempos were elevated throughout that show.
Wow. We had talked earlier, Matt, at the top of the recording about your trip to London. And can we touch on the auction? Can you talk a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I was approached by a kind of a friend of my brother's that we knew as kids growing up. I knew this gentleman. He was always a really good guy to me. One of my brother's really close friends. And he contacted me like late last year and said, hey, I'm really good friends with this guy who's works for this auction house in London, and they're doing music memorabilia. Would you be interested in selling some of your memorabilia if you have any? And I said, I don't know. I hadn't really thought of it. I was going to leave everything to the kids and let them deal with it, you know. He says, "Oh, you don't want to do that." And I go, "Why not?" He goes, "Because your kids don't want to be dealing with that when you're gone." And are you sure about that? Yeah, ask them. So I asked my kids, my two boys, I said, "What do you think about this? Auctioning this stuff off now?" And they go, "Great idea, Dad. We don't want to deal with it." So that was it. So I made the decision. I thought, this is probably a good time to sell some of that stuff. I didn't sell everything, but I sold some pretty interesting items. 80% of it sold so far, but the items that didn't go are up for 2 more weeks at propstore.com in case anybody's interested. I think the Oberheim I put up, the OB8, which was one of our backup Oberheims on tour for Purple Rain and subsequently the Parade tour and stuff, and was used in the studio by Prince and myself at times. So that one, I think it's going to sell. It almost made the reserve on the day of the auction, but it didn't quite get there. So it was up for sale. And then a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, I know somebody that may want to bid on that. Definitely wants." And I said, "Well, just direct them there and see what happens." So I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully the other items will sell. And that's that. And then we're just going to put the money in a trust fund for grandchildren and stuff, things like that.
I get it.
Awesome.
All the interesting items that you had in there, there was a cassette version of the Rebels album that never got released through Warner Brothers.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That was my,
you had all that. So a lot of the cassettes that you sold with rehearsals and tours tapes, were some of those tapes mixes that you had made for you to learn keyboard parts? Were any of those
There were
sold?
a couple, yeah.
Okay. I imagine you had a lot of that digitally archived to begin with, or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I figured that's why you could be able to sell it, because you have all that archive. Great.
Yeah, and then the people who bought it are obligated by a law to not sell that or duplicate that stuff.
to bootleg.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And
that's
as it should be
auction
that
house
way.
has them sign that. Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't sell it otherwise.
No, absolutely. And that's in a world where we live and where ethics is a lost art form. I'm glad to see that that's still there.
But what I'd like to do though with it is create maybe choice pieces from that archive and show Prince's creative process and let the estate have that to sell from the museum, like a special release of some kind. I haven't really brought this idea up to them yet, but I'm thinking about it.
I think that's a lovely idea. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of Cat Glover recently, the last month or so. Would you mind sharing any stories, anything about Cat?
Yeah, Cat and I were really good friends, I'd like to say. She stayed in touch with me over the years, and I had the opportunity to do a panel with her and Ingrid Chavez in New York back in I think it was 2018 or 19.
Yes, 2018.
2018
with
New
Angela
York.
Duff.
With the Angela Duff, and we did that, and that was the last time, one of the last times I was with Kat, and then I learned not long after that she was battling a brain tumor, and apparently it was cured though.
Oh,
like about a year or so later, and then I never really learned what may have, taken place to have her lose her life. So I just don't know. So I spoke to her manager, but they weren't being forthcoming about anything yet about her.
Yeah.
But I felt really bad, obviously, about her when I knew that she had passed away. I have a fond memory of actually during the Love Sexy tour, her and myself and one of our bodyguards went and did some sightseeing around Rome, including the Colosseum.
Oh,
I have pictures of myself with Kat standing in front of the Colosseum.
Oh my God.
In my archive. Anybody want that? No, just kidding. In my archive.
What's the starting bid at,
We're going to auction that off next. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, done
but the sense of humor is what is this is what gets us through tough moments like that.
I know.
I mean, and her and Bonnie Boyer. I mean, I understand. Bonnie. Speaking of people who can make you laugh.
Oh, she was a card. Bonnie was a card. I mean, this girl, she was funny. Fun to hang out with.
Oh man. I mean, that'd be the first time I saw you guys, September 30th, 88 in the Hartford Coliseum. I'll never forget that. Oh, but that production, out of all the productions that you worked on, certainly was the most technically intricate, right?
Yes,
I mean, all the hydraulics. I distinctly remember when Controversy would play, those hydraulics would lift up into the stained glass to try to duplicate what the video looked like. I mean, unfreaking believable. I still remember to this day. And the basketball hoop on the stage, and all this crazy shit with the fiberglass T-bird, which I understand costs about back then $250,000 or something, or some crazy.
Yeah, and you can thank Roy Bennett, the stage design guy, for that with Prince. They both masterminded all of that design together. And did you know that there was an actual waterfall originally worked into that stage from the front of it, or where it would have been the front? It was, I know it was a round stage, but at one side of it there was a waterfall, and they had it set up at Paisley Park in the big soundstage room for the first time, for rehearsals, to try to make the waterfall thing happen. And of course, that they started it up and it leaked everywhere, and they had to shut it down immediately to prevent anybody getting electrocuted.
Now, could you combine that with the plasma ball from Sign of the Times and have one hell of a cookout?
Yeah.
Because they tried that with the plasma ball, too, to try to make it huge, right?
That I don't know about that story. But
yeah, hey, by the way, Bennett's in an interview, he talks about how Prince wanted this plasma ball to be
really big one? A big one? Yeah, you know who turned him on to the plasma ball thing? It was me. Oh, I told you that. Okay, yeah. I was the guy that was at the original art gallery that invented the plasma balls in New Orleans. I went there one day. We were on tour. I think this was like 1986 during the parade tour. And I saw this, and then I took the brochure and I took pictures, and I said, "Hey, Prince, look at this thing." He goes, "Wow, that's really cool." Next thing you know, he's using the plasma balls for stuff. Yeah.
Oh, man. But that's iconic, because one of my favorite albums, arguably for many Prince fans, is Sign of the Times. And that whole period of fertile creativity, to say the least, Jesus. And you were part of that whole fabric. Not necessarily in the creative end of it, but Wendy and Lisa, I think, were more of the creative muses at that time. But
they for Sign of the Times, they were on a few of the tracks that ended up on there, but they were probably more on Parade and Round the World in a Day, I think, than the other one. But they were on a little bit, and then It's Going to Be a Beautiful Night, I had a little kind of, Prince gave me a little, "Hey, you helped write that, here you go."
Now, what about Roadhouse Garden and Dream Factory? Any of those tracks? I mean, are we ever going to see maybe a Roadhouse Garden, vinyl release like Jack Black's been trying to do with the Camille album?
That's a good question. I wish I could answer, because the estate people are kind of sitting on that stuff. I thought some of that got leaked years ago, got bootlegged somewhere, because I had people sending me bootlegs from Europe, double album bootlegs of stuff that had some of that on there. What was the name? Name some of the Roadhouse Garden tracks that you remember. Do you remember any of them besides that song? There was one called, and I can hear it in my head, and the title
wasn't A Place in Heaven on there? That was Dream Factory.
Yeah. Anyway,
all the purists are gonna kill me.
Anyway, no big deal. It's okay.
Of course it is. Well, I tell you, you got any future gigs coming up with the Minneapolis Funk All-Stars, or working with Olivia Russa? Or
no, other than a New Year's Eve gig, and I don't know if it's a private corporate thing or if it's open to the public, and it's out of town. I think it's in Oklahoma,
Ah, okay.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I don't know if
Tulsa.
it's a public event. I have to look at the calendar.
Hey,
We
you just
played there.
show up and play. And,
We played there last summer with some of the members from Chicago had a group playing that day too
oh,
on the same bill. Yeah.
And I gotta ask a question since you're, talking about all these tours and stuff, and the stuff that I'm like absolutely fascinated by is, what is it like? What would uh, be for you, like, what are the logistical things that you have to think about and contend with when you're doing a stadium show that's giant versus just, something more intimate? Like, is there, do you see that there's a big difference for you, or not, or?
Not really. Other than, if you're playing a really big arena or a big stadium thing, which really doesn't happen for me much anymore. um, we were always told by management and people around Prince, say, now make sure you gesture very loudly on stage and when you're dancing, and lots of big arm movements when you do stuff to project out to the audience. And I said, okay, how do you do that when you got one hand on one keyboard and one on the other? Exactly. But I used to do I used to be Mr. Robot in the early days. I used to do some robotic moves to kind of be different, and you know.
And was there any like wild like I mean, typically how big was your setup then in terms of, how many boards did you have to contend with, and like, was it a
Um
nightmare for patch
the
changes, or was
the
it pretty much set and forget? And
I think the Purple Rain setup was a total of, let's see, one, two, three, four, five keyboards on stage for my side of the stage. And then, for the encore, like when we did Baby I'm a Star, Lisa and I would switch sides for that. And I'd play the rig
hmm.
over on the other side. And that one was more of a three keyboard kind of synth rig. And then if she had to play piano on something, she'd be on the other side where I had the piano. But I was usually on that side for most of the show with the with
right.
the
And were
with
you
the
more like
piano.
a set and forget, or did you have to like, like, oh, this song I have to load all this stuff and patch change, or was it
Yeah, oh
more
yeah.
like,
Yeah, I had to do patch change stuff on each machine and in those days. Then later I had MIDI controllers after that tour. After the Purple Rain tour, things moved to MIDI controllers and rack mount machines and things like that. And that kind of went that direction. Except I always had a few hardware synths on stage. Sign of the Times, I had a Prophet VS up there
mm,
because I'm the one that brought the Prophet VS to rehearsal one day, and Prince really liked it. He ended up recording several songs on Sign of the Times using that.
What
Songs like
song?
Hot Thing, the song Hot Thing
Oh, okay.
that was used on there, and You Got the Look had Prophet VS sounds on it.
Cool. Oh, man, I love little detail shit like that. The Prophet,
Yeah,
and then I know Peter Gabriel used that since, particularly when he did the Passion soundtrack for the Last Temptation of Christ. That was a big narrative thrust in his toolkit.
exactly. And so we
Mm.
had the fair. By then we were bringing the Fairlight CMI on
Ugh.
tour with us, which was stupid.
oh
Yeah, thirty
God, you
thousand
really?
dollars worth.
Yeah, it wasn't smart to have that out on the road, but it worked. But the problem was
Wow.
you had to have a tech. My keyboard tech assistant would be off stage loading the 8-inch floppy
Oh my
disks
God.
at the right moments so the next song sound would be loaded up in time. So we had to like stagger songs that were using the Fairlight so it
That's
could load those
crazy.
floppies. So then we solved that for the next tour where we just transferred all those sounds and resampled them into Emu Emacs
The Emacs, right?
rack
Yeah.
mounts with built-in hard drives
Mm-hmm.
back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tom Dolby, when Martin had him on his podcast, talked about how he simply could not do a gig because they couldn't get the Fairlight there. You were slave to that technology, and
Yeah.
the loading the discs, the thing just crap. They finally got it an hour late to the gig, or something along these lines, and the
Yeah.
floppy disk decided not to work. So
Oh,
they
not
had to
good.
to cancel the gig.
Even worse. Yikes.
You've never. So, are there any moments? Speaking of like technological nightmares, can you recall a particular gig? I mean, we're going back decades, where something like that happened in the middle of a song, or something just didn't load up, and you had to carry on, or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple things come to mind. One is where I had Yamaha KX88 MIDI controllers
Uh-huh.
on stage,
Mhm.
and then I had the rack mount synths off stage or piano modules. I didn't need Yamaha CP70s anymore because by then we were using MKS20 Rolands and some other rack mount stuff. So anyway, long story short, if you didn't make your program change uh, for the next, like, let's say like I was playing one song and there were three different patches you had to use and switch to during the song, which would happen occasionally. If you didn't have your hand off of the keyboard when you made the program change, the last notes you played would latch and play.
Like a pedal tone. Oh shit.
Well, whatever notes you played, if you're playing a chord, and then if you had to go to patch 3 from patch 2 right next door, but you didn't let your hand off the chord at the right
Right.
moment, you had to make it had split second change sometimes. And if you missed it by a millisecond, those notes would just go,
Yeah, it's still setting out a note on.
just a whole chord, in the
my-
middle of the song.
Oh,
And then
man.
Prince would look back at you and go, "What the fuck?" And so there was a panic button that somebody off stage could hit. I couldn't do it from my end, so my guy was always there. And then
Oh,
after
God.
that happened a couple times during the show, he brought me into the dressing room after the show. And he goes, "Matt, what happened?" I go, "Well, this newfangled MIDI controller technology hasn't figured out if you're how to switch patches while you're still holding another chord on the synthesizer that you're switching on. If you switch the note or switch the patch while you're still holding the notes, it just keeps playing the notes and latches them." He goes, and he looks at me, he goes, "Matt, yeah, I can't have that in my show." That was his solution. "I can't have that in my show." I said, "Okay, I'll do my best to avoid that problem again. I apologize that happened. It's the first time this has happened, or maybe it was the second time anyway." Either way, he finally had to say something to me. So then I just had to be really careful.
Shit.
Now they fixed this stuff years later, a few years later with MIDI control. But at this time it was the new frontier, like we said back then.
Sure.
And so that was happening. Then, okay, the other time that happened, which was really funny, was 1990 nude tour. This was when we had the Emaxes and racks on the side of the stage.
Mm-hmm.
But when you switch programs from the MIDI controller, you had to wait several seconds. And sometimes it wouldn't load quickly enough, or sometimes it loaded improperly, which is rare.
Yeah.
But this particular night, we're in the middle of the encore, and house lights are up at Wembley Arena in London. And Prince breaks the band down to nothing. Everybody step on the one, and then he has this cue for me. And he goes, "Okay, Fink, what you got for me now?" And then I'm supposed to hit a note, and a drum loop is supposed to play from the Emax sampler. Well, instead of the drum loop, it was another sample that was still there that hadn't switched, and it was a woman going.
Oh.
So there's no drum loop, just and then Prince goes, "Okay, Fink, what you got for me now?" Thinking maybe the sample will load in time. I hit the note again. Does it again. He tries one more time. "Fink, what you got for me now?" I hit the note again, and it still hasn't loaded. The breathy voice comes on one more time, and then he just turns to Michael Bland. He goes, "Michael, hit me." and Michael Bland comes in with the drum loop, a drum groove at that point. So very
I
silly,
imagine there was
very
a
silly.
dressing room meeting
There was
after
a
that.
dressing room conversation after that one. Yes.
Matt,
Yep.
what happened?
Matt, what happened tonight? I don't know, but I don't know what happened tonight. Something didn't load in time. Well, I can't have that in my show.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, Prince. Don't find me.
Gotta put this. You gotta put this in a book. Now, you know what, Matt? You did tell us last time you were on before Jay joined forces that you were working on a podcast. Did that ever?
No, it didn't come to fruition because I'm just too swamped. It's just too much, I think, to do. And I prefer being a guest. It's easier than trying to run a podcast. I like being guest on podcasts.
Oh,
in fact, I got one coming up. I got another one today. In fact, I'm doing another one at 5:00. Oh. Just to tell you how in demand I am. I've been doing tons of these lately. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what did I do something?
It's that auction, damn it.
No, this is pre-auction even.
Really?
I've been doing that stuff. Hey, by the way, did you look at the auction while it was happening? Have you seen the results? Have you looked at Prop Store, the website? And
no, I have not. I will do.
Well, if you sign up, you can go look at what was there and what sold and all that stuff.
Post haste, sir. Post haste.
Yeah,
You're just dropping gems. That story about the email.
And I'm not exactly, I just want all the fans to know, look, I'm not getting rich off the auction. Believe me, it's just something. So we had so much stuff in storage. We just had to get, it's just sitting around doing nothing in vacuum sealed bags and stuff.
There are people who want that stuff. Believe me.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with it other than that. I did sell some gold records too and platinum stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I still have other.
Is there any gear from back then that you're still over my cold dead hands, kind of like never giving this up? Still?
Nope. I've sold everything over the years that I've had. Vintage stuff. I have nothing vintage left over here really, except for my Emacs. I have my Emacs and some nice old rack mount gear here and there, but it's not vintage. It's more like 90s stuff.
Is there a print mark from your hand on that Emacs that you hit? Is that the one that crapped out on you on the on the new tour? Oh, okay, you got rid of that one.
that was a rack mount model. This is a keyboard version.
Oh, okay.
It's like the year they came out. It's my personal first Emacs I ever bought, and it has. And I have a lot of the samples from that Fairlight transferred, yes, on discs for that. Absolutely.
I'd love to hear it.
By the way, I show students here stuff from the 90s and they go, ooh, vintage. And I'm like, shut up.
Right?
Yeah.
Vintage.
Yeah.
Just because you weren't born yet.
And so you see that memory Moog behind you there in that picture of me that I'm looking at behind you. That was raffled off for the Moog Museum for their education program. That model right there. That was one of the ones on Purple Rain tour.
Wow.
Matt, did you ever get to meet Bob Moog?
No.
Okay.
I wish. Me
too. Me too. And to thank him for all he did.
Yeah.
I did when I was 14, before I really knew who I was talking to.
Well,
I kind of had an inkling, but it wasn't until later that I realized.
Yeah, but and the thing is that it was Moog synthesizers and the album Switched on Bach when I was 10 years old when that came out that inspired me to get into synthesizers.
There's one person I'd love to talk to is Wendy Carlos. I mean, you talk about still with us. I think in the 90s.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's a book that someone just recommended to me recently. I'm about halfway through. It's amazing. It's called Analog Days.
Yes.
And it's the whole chronology of, Moog and Buchla and like all those people back then. And there's a lot of amazing stories in it. Also a heroic amount of drug use. But there are stories in there that are absolutely insane. It's not just a historical thing. And one of the things was when Bob was on his way to go defend his dissertation, because he's kind of got a short attention span. he's in the elevator and he starts thinking about, okay, this elevator is this many floors tall, and there's
Mhm.
going to be some kind of resonant frequency for the elevator shaft. And he starts jumping up and down and then finds the resonant frequency. And then all of a sudden, the elevator starts becoming really, really violent and grinds to a halt. And he's trapped in
Oh.
there for 4 hours.
Oh my God. What's the title of this book again?
It's called Analog Days.
Really?
So he got
That sounds like
trapped in the elevator for 4 hours, and then they had to rescue him, and then he got to defend his dissertation 4 hours later and become a doctor.
Oh, Jesus
Wow.
Christ. Is
But there's
Morton
like it's
Subotnick? Is Morton
he's all over the
Subotnick in
book,
there as
yeah.
well?
All over the book, yeah.
Because I mean, you talk
Yeah.
about book
And
luck.
Wendy Carlos and Suzanne Chani and
Hey,
like
Wow.
all these people.
Wow.
Morton is still
And
with
it's
us
just
in his 90s and as sharp as ever. He was in a two-part interview with Martin. If you haven't listened to it, the two of
Who
you
again?
need
Who again?
Morton
Morton
Subotnick.
Subotnick.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Silver
Okay.
Apples of the Moon, right? I mean, you know, I remember hearing that in music theory class. I mean, you know, he was the guy that really pioneered a lot of shit. But he still uses the booklet. And actually, I understand that a lot of his files and stuff like that are going to be transferred into the Library of Congress.
Oh, wow.
And he's going to be there for the ceremony. Yeah, I think they're holding a ceremony at the Kennedy Center.
Very
And
cool.
yeah, but he was, yeah. But his interviews about how he created music, and he's so sharp. He's like 92 or 93, so sharp. The power of music that keeps us young in the brain.
Well, yeah, we have to keep going because if we don't, we get bored. We'd be bored otherwise. Boring.
Drive people crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I can't thank you enough for coming back on, man. This is just not just entertainment, just so much damn fun. I mean, thank you.
You're welcome. And if you get a chance, check out the Minnesota Wild hockey team. Somebody gave me this. I don't know. They were in a playoff last year. There we go. Okay.
Cool.
Are you guys hockey fans?
New York
We've got
Rangers.
the Flyers here. I'm not from the Philly area, so like I'm a Baltimore sports guy. I'm a Ravens fan. So we had the Skipjacks back in the 80s, but they're I know.
Go Vikings. Go Vikings. Okay, sorry.
Skull. Yes, I know.
I keep up a little bit with the sports around here, but I'm not like a major sports fan, but I do enjoy,
Tommy
when the
Barbarella,
Vikings
I understand, is a huge Vikings guy. He goes
Oh,
nuts
well,
over it.
I mean, I am too. I'm a fan,
Yeah, but
especially when they're doing well like this year.
Yeah.
This year.
Listen, don't get me started about the game with the Steelers. So
Okay. All right. All right. Well, it was great hanging with you guys today, and
Thank you.
we'll stay in touch when it's time to put out more music.
Absolutely, thank you, man.
I'm right now. I'm in production mode. That's all I'm saying. I'm producing.
Love
stuff.
it. I love to hear that. And folks, we'll have a lot of links for Matt down below and your auction so people can see that stuff. If you like what you heard today, or if you're watching it as well on YouTube, if you like what you saw today, please hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed yet. And as I like to say before we close, I'd like to also thank my dear brothers here for being here. Howie, thanks for coming on and guesting today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, always a pleasure, man. We will, since you and I live not far from each other, we'll have to get together for a drink or so. And if you, again, as I like to always say before we close, a rising tide lifts all boats. Jay?
And Howie, Matt, thank you again very much. This was definitely a treat for us. We look forward to seeing you again. And for all of you out there, please always remember, when the universe comes knocking, you have to answer that door. Peace.
Peace.
Right.